The lie that you abandon her because you didn't care about her gets counteracted by the truth that you went away for a really short period of time to take care of yourself because you wanted to be a good mom and take better care of her. Welcome to the Blended Family Breakthrough Podcast. We're your hosts, Mike and Kim.
We believe in a world where blended families can experience a future full of hope, connection, and peace.
That's why we offer tools, strategies, and guidance that move you from a place of confusion and conflict to experiencing a life of confidence and connection.
We're so glad you're joining us for authentic and sometimes comical conversations as we cover everything from romance to parenting, and yes, even dealing with that difficult ex.
So if you're ready to experience breakthrough in your blended family, you're in the right place. Let's dive in. Hey there, welcome, and thanks for joining us today. Whether you take us in the car, in the gym, or while you're doing household chores, we are really grateful for the time that we get to spend with you each week. And if the show brings value to you, we would love to hear how. Recently, over on Apple Podcasts, Susan left a review that said, blended families will have challenges and some shows tiptoe around the main issues, only sharing how blended families should be. This show uses their failures and how they learn better to help others. And this is what people really need. Susan, you said more than that, and we really want to thank you for the feedback. One of our core values for the work we do is that we want to cultivate hope for blended families. And you're absolutely right that one key way we do that is through being authentic about our failures from the past. And we try to be thoughtful in the lessons that were learned.
Absolutely.
Now, we believe that can bring inspiration to those who listen and transformation for those who put learning into action. Hey, thanks again, Susan, for that feedback. And to those of you listening right now, I want to invite you to share your feedback just like Susan did. Tap the star rating that best fits your experience with us, and then maybe take a moment to share a review and to share what you've been learning. Hey, thanks so much in advance. We really appreciate it. How about we hop into the show, hon?
Absolutely. You know, sometimes one parent seems to pull the kids into the middle of visitation issues, trying to win them over or sway their loyalties or subtly damage their relationship with the other parent. We experienced this firsthand with my daughter, and let me tell you, it created incredible emotional pressure on her. She was torn. And honestly, what every child truly wants is simple: to feel connected and loved by both parents, to freely enjoy time at each home. But sadly, not every child gets to experience that freedom. So today, we want to better understand what might be going on when your child starts to pull away. This is a kind of an extension from our discussion last time, and how you can respond in a way that protects your relationship and supports your child's emotional well-being.
That's right. And before we get into the signs that this might be happening to your child and how to minimize that impact, we want to start with a word of caution. Be really careful not to jump to conclusions or assume things that might not be grounded in reality. Just because your child seems to be pulling away doesn't always mean that the other parent is influencing them or kind of poisoning the well. Sometimes when a child says that they want more time at the other house, it's easy to assume the worst. Oh, my ex must be saying things about me that are causing this. But that's not always the case.
That's why it's so important to take a step back and apply the tips that we shared a couple of weeks ago in episode 210. It's all about gaining clarity before making any assumptions. And if you missed that episode, we'll drop a link in the show notes. But here's a quick review. Tip 1, regulate your own emotions first. When you stay calm and grounded, you're better able to focus on what your child is experiencing and then respond in a way that builds deeper connection.
That's right. Tip 2 is to listen, to understand, and validate. When your child feels heard, it builds trust, and that trust opens the door for them to share more of what's really going on.
And tip 3 is to co-create a new action step with your child. This gives your child a sense of control and helps you work with them toward a reasonable solution. Now, in that episode, we explored a time when my daughter Annika had a valid frustration about the dynamic of moving between two homes. She was getting really tired of having to haul all of her stuff back and forth, and she thought that if she just stayed at Dad's more, it would be a lot easier. At the time, it was a logistics problem, not a relational problem. So if your child is pulling away from you, we encourage you to first consider what might be going on for your child under the surface before assuming that your ex is the cause.
Absolutely. And in next week's Simple Step, we're going to explore a few of the common reasons why kids might lean toward one parent over the other. Things like separation anxiety or favoritism or a perceived need to care for the other parent. So be sure to catch that next week and be open to considering everything your child might be experiencing before making assumptions about the other home. The overarching goal should always be peaceful and cooperative co-parenting, because that's what's best for your kids.
Sometimes that's possible, but in other situations, it can be challenging. We know that firsthand. Having said that, let's dive in and explore some indications that your co-parent may be putting your child into the middle or negatively influencing them through manipulative tactics that could be distorting or disrupting your relationship with your child. So here are some warning signs. Subtle or overt guilt trips. This parent sends the message that it's not okay for the child to enjoy time with their other parent. They may act angry or distraught when the child returns from a good visit with that parent.
Yeah. Another indicator is interference with visitation. They might give the child the impression that visitation with the other parent is optional, or even manipulate them into rejecting that visit, saying something like, "Would you rather go out of town with us or spend a boring weekend with your dad? Like, we've got so many fun things planned." That's definitely interference.
Yes. Then there's twisting facts or spreading misinformation. This parent distorts the truth to make the other parent appear unsafe, unloving, or unfit.
Right. There's also oversharing adult issues. This parent shares inappropriate details about the previous marriage or the divorce, often with a skewed version of the events to make the child assign blame. You know, mom's the one who really wanted the divorce. They might also discuss medical, emotional, educational, legal, logistics, or financial issues that kind of puts the child in the middle of things that really should be worked out between the adults.
Also, lack of emotional boundaries. This parent expects the child to take sides. If they carry bitterness and mistrust towards the other parent, well, the child is expected to mirror those feelings.
Yeah, and sometimes that leads to using the child as a go-between. So rather than communicating directly with the other parent, they send messages through the child. That's a red flag.
Monitoring communication. The parent listens in on the phone calls or coaches the child on what to say during visitation, especially during key moments like family meals or bedtime while the child is with that other parent. And also intrusive communication, texting or calling the child excessively during the other parent's visitation.
Yeah. You know, over the years, I think we saw just about all of those things happening with your ex. Would you say that's true?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That is true. And, you know, it started out subtle and then it started to intensify over time.
Yeah. Now, again, you don't want to jump to conclusions or assume the worst when a child is pulling away. Rather, you want to pause and gain some awareness. We want you to look for concrete facts, evidence that they might be influenced by the other parent, but also consider that something else could be happening beneath the surface. So before you label your ex as manipulative or start casting blame on them, make sure you've explored all the possibilities and focus on the facts that actually point toward your concern.
Long after that season where we resolved the logistical frustration that Annika had, things started shifting in her attitude again. For quite some time, I wasn't sure what was happening when she was pulling away. At first, it seemed like she just was tired of going back and forth between our homes. But then she started giving vague reasons for wanting to live with her dad. Things like, I just want to be at my dad's more, or I can focus better on my studies at his house because he helps me with my homework, when we were also helping her with homework. Mm-hmm. Things just didn't quite add up. Then at one point, Annika shared with her counselor that she believed I had abandoned her early in life, something she had been told by her dad. So he had shared with her that I abandoned her as a baby and never really cared about her. That's what she believed, and that hit me hard. Moving forward, the counselor started noticing signs of manipulation and coercion. Eventually, a guardian ad litem was appointed by the courts to advocate for Annika, and she also saw some red flags. She observed that Annika was being coached by her dad on what to say in their meetings. Now, at first, none of this was obvious. Annika never actually verbalized to me what her dad had told her, or that she thought that I'd abandoned her. It's common for kids who are stuck in the middle to shut down or get defensive when asked about what's going on with the other parent. But over time, the pieces began to fall into place. The manipulation became undeniable, and sadly, it escalated into a case of parental alienation. I lost regular connection with my daughter for a long and painful season, and our whole family suffered, and so did she.
That's right. Parental alienation is an escalation of manipulation from one parent to create mistrust and separation from the other parent. Now, it's important to understand what parental alienation is and what it isn't. Now, today's episode is not focused on parental alienation, but we're including a link in the show notes to a resource that outlines 17 common strategies used by an alienating parent. So knowing what to look for is key. So that would be a resource for you to get some facts.
Yes. We've also included a link to an interview we did with Dr. Amy J.L. Baker about her book, Parenting Under Fire. Mm-hmm. It's an invaluable guide for parents dealing with children who are hurt, angry, rejecting, or distant, what Amy calls hard children. Mm-hmm. Amy is a leading expert in child psychology and parental alienation.
That's right. And her book teaches parents how to communicate effectively and with empathy using a range of practical strategies. So this is a great resource if you're looking for effective ways to respond and connect with a child who is pulling away from you.
Mm-hmm. I wish we'd had Amy's book back then to guide us when my daughter was hurt, angry, resistant, and distancing herself from us. Yep. Watching my daughter go from a happy kid who wanted to participate in our family life to resisting visits, questioning our intentions, and pulling away, it was so confusing and really hard to cope with. Mm-hmm. I was often at a loss, and I felt invisible as a mom. My character was questioned, my role devalued, and at times I felt outright attacked. Amy's book could have helped me understand what was happening and how to respond better in those emotionally charged moments with Annika.
That's right. Now, let me say it again. Don't assume parental alienation is the issue without taking time to educate yourself. Gather real information. Talk to professionals. Don't make assumptions or leap to conclusions. You really need clarity and support.
Honestly, one of the hardest parts of our story was that there wasn't any obvious trigger. There was no major conflict between Annika and us, or even between my ex and us. Nothing bad had happened, and that's what made it so confusing. There was just this subtle shift in my ex's behavior and in how our daughter related to us. To this day, more than 15 years later, we still don't fully understand why it happened, and we probably never will.
That's right. So let's explore some things that might be happening under the surface, not necessarily in parental alienation cases, but just in everyday co-parenting when one parent decides to kind of undermine the other and is possibly manipulating the child. In high conflict divorces, some parents struggle with losing control or really holding on to their identity as a parent. Instead of encouraging a healthy relationship with the other parent, they kind of attempt to tear it down. They may see the child as an extension of themselves, so when the child shows affection to the other parent, it kind of feels like a betrayal or a direct threat to their relationship with the child. And that can lead to manipulation, where the child becomes kind of a pawn in an ongoing power struggle. And sadly, it puts the child in a pretty impossible position, stuck between two parents that they really just want to love.
Yeah, and the impact is very real. Kids caught in this impossible bind can suffer emotional harm. They often struggle to identify or express their own true feelings and beliefs. They learn to prioritize a parent's emotional needs over their own. And later in life, as adults, they may feel unsafe in close relationships or have difficulty setting healthy boundaries. But here's the hope. With the right support and strategies, kids can recover and thrive.
That's right. We know how tempting it is to lash out or fight fire with fire, but this is where many parents end up making some easy wrong turns that tend to make things worse. The overarching goal is to protect your child from the conflict, not pull them deeper into it. So let's talk about what you want to avoid if your child is stuck in the middle. First, avoid oversharing adult information with your kids. That includes any details about custody arrangements or visitation schedules. If your child says something like, "My mom says I get to choose where I want to live now," resist the urge to correct or argue with them. Instead, stay calm and take a neutral, grounded approach with a response like, "I'm not really sure where your mom's getting that from, honey, but decisions like that are made between me and your mom. We're your parents, and we're going to work together to figure out what's best for you, okay?" Now, if your child initiates a conversation with you about custody or visitation, refer back to those 3 tips that we shared earlier from episode 210. And most importantly, avoid saying things that sound dismissive or critical about your child or about the other parent. Phrases like, "That's not true," or "Your mom doesn't know what she's talking about," can quickly trigger a defensive reaction. Your child might rush to defend that other parent or just shut down on you altogether, which only deepens the disconnection in your relationship. Instead, you want to strive to be calm, curious, and mindful in your response. And remember, your tone matters just as much as the words, maybe even more.
You also don't want to lean on your child for emotional support. Process your own pain with other healthy, trustworthy adults, not your child. Your child isn't responsible to make you feel better. Your child is hurting, they're confused, and they're just trying to survive in the middle of dynamics they don't understand. So be careful that you aren't adding your own emotional burdens onto them. Now, if you think that your ex might be leaning on your child for emotional support, or you're wondering if you might be unintentionally doing this, you might want to check out episode 161 to discover what you can do to help ease the burden for your child and protect them from the dysfunction of parentification. And you can find a link to that in the show notes.
That's right. Does it ever feel like people just don't get how tough it is to blend a family? What if you could experience a community that's all about healthy support, guidance, and practical strategies that help you thrive in your blended family? Well, now you can. Blending Together is a supportive community for blended family couples just like you.
We've educated and supported hundreds of couples navigating the unique challenges of blended family life. Now we're inviting you to join our community and experience the transformation that awaits you. Blending Together is not just another community. It's a place where you'll find practical, real-life strategies for building unity as a couple,
creating more connection as a family,
experiencing partnership in parenting,
and even dealing with that difficult ex.
Blending Together is a safe, growth-focused space where you'll get to connect with us and maybe more importantly, with other blended family couples who truly understand what you're going through. Along the way, you'll discover practical tools, guidance, and hope that empower you to find a future full of confidence and connection.
When you join Blending Together, you'll gain access to a variety of resources like our private Facebook group and online learning platform, monthly coaching meetings, monthly Q&As, and you'll even get to vote on the content for our monthly workshops.
Blending a family can often leave couples feeling alone or isolated, and quality support can sometimes be expensive and hard to find. That's why we're offering you access to all of this at a super low monthly rate, because every blended family deserves the opportunity to thrive regardless of their budget.
So scroll all the way to the bottom of the show notes and click the link to join us in the Blending Together community and meet other couples just like you in our upcoming community meeting. Plus, when you join before the end of the month, you'll gain access to our brand new bonus mini course that will help you make quick headway. Hey, thanks so much for joining us today. We can't wait to meet you inside Blending Together. Just click the link all the way at the bottom of the show notes to get started.
We'll see you there.
Another thing you want to think about is making sure that you are not over-diagnosing every issue on the divorce, on the blending process, or on the other house, right? Sometimes it's really easy to think that everything we see is because of these dynamics that we talk about. But the reality is kids go through normal developmental struggles just like kids in first families do, right? So don't let guilt or irrational fear or your own emotions cloud your judgment around this. Be willing to kind of get up out of the weeds and consider what other factors might be contributing to the child's struggle. Maybe they're having a challenge with a friend or their friend group. Maybe they're struggling at school for some reason. There's so many things that our kids are dealing with. It's not always just about blended family stuff.
Yeah. A big one you want to avoid is bad mouthing your ex.
It's tempting.
I get it. Yeah. You might be dealing with someone who's constantly putting you down and dismissing your parental role. But here's the thing. Your kids know that they are part of both of you. So when you take a verbal jab at your ex, your child could very well internalize those comments as part of how you see them. This will also pull your child deeper into the middle, forcing them to choose a side. Even when you're feeling angry or frustrated, your child doesn't need to carry that burden. Instead, vent to a friend, a therapist, or journal your complaints about your ex. Do not share these things with your children or even in earshot. Kids have really big ears. They can hear you on the phone. You will never regret taking the high road on this and keeping your kids out of the middle.
That's right. And finally, resist the urge to fight a manipulative co-parent by attempting to manipulate your kids.
Yeah.
All of the warning signs that we mentioned earlier are things that you do not want to do. Don't retaliate. It's going to backfire and typically amplify the problem. Here's the bottom line. Kids need freedom from the emotional weight of grown-up conflicts. Even if your ex is manipulating and pulling them into the middle, you can choose to take the high road and stay focused on what's right for your child by protecting them instead of pulling them in deeper. Now, I would argue that it's even more important to remain steadfast on the high road if your child's other parent has kind of gone rogue. Your child needs your steadiness, your stableness, and the safety of your relationship, and you're the only one that can provide that. All right, so we've covered some things that you need to really avoid doing. Now let's talk about what you can do.
Let's be real, though. No parent gets it right 100% of the time, especially following a difficult divorce. Even the most well-meaning parents can unintentionally create anxiety or confusion for their kids. I've certainly made my fair share of mistakes along the way. And to make things harder, many kids can't always tell us what they need or what they're experiencing. Even when they do know, it's hard to find the words, especially when they're stuck between two households. This means that we need to stay patient and focused on protecting our kids. What's the first thing we can do in these challenging dynamics, honey?
Well, first, if you're feeling overwhelmed or stuck in the drama or unsure of what to do next, we want to encourage you to get some support. A skilled mediator, coach, or therapist can help you to navigate visitation issues and parenting decisions without putting your child in the middle. And don't hesitate to seek legal counsel if you feel that your parental rights might be at risk, especially if you don't already have a parenting plan on file with a specific visitation schedule. Now, that doesn't mean you have to go start filing paperwork and kick up a bunch of conflict. Sometimes it just means meeting with an attorney or a community law advocacy group to get some advice on what your next steps might be. You really don't have to go it alone. Get some support. What else can we do, honey?
Well, we can stay in the neutral zone. When your child makes a false claim about you, something like, well, you don't care about me, it can be incredibly painful to hear. But instead of rushing in with, well, that's a lie, or you know that's not true, it's better to stay in the neutral zone. What that really means is responding with gratitude, compassion, and empathy instead of correction. It might sound something like this. I'm grateful that you're letting me know what's on your mind, honey. I cherish our relationship and hope that I never hurt or disappoint you, and I do want to know if you feel that I have. I'm really trying to look at things from your perspective. It must be painful to think that I don't care about you. To me, you're an amazing kid, and you deserve to be loved, and I've always loved you. This kind of response allows you to stay emotionally grounded and connected without agreement of the false claim. Jumping straight into correction or accusation towards the child or accusing the other parent of something, that will almost always elevate your child's confusion and resistance towards you. It can turn the moment into a power struggle rather than a safe space for emotional clarity and openness. Your focus should stay on your child's feelings, not proving that the other parent is wrong or bad.
Yeah, and this is really hard, especially when your emotions are running high. But it is possible to stay calm even when your child is echoing some painful, misguided beliefs about you. Rather than confronting your child to kind of set the record straight, we want to encourage you to take note of those moments. Keep a record of the beliefs that they're expressing. And then, with a little patience, wait for the right opportunity to gently place what we call a pebble in their shoe, or a small, simple truth that they can carry with them until they're really ready to examine it for themselves.
Right. Let's talk about the pebble in their shoe strategy. First, we want to identify the truth behind the lie. We want to get clear on the truth that counteracts that lie. Now, for me, there was a specific piece of history I knew was being twisted and feeding the false narrative that I had abandoned Annika. Earlier in my life, I had struggled with issues around substance abuse. And when Annika was 2 years old, I made the decision to get some help for that. So I left Annika in the care of her dad for 19 days while I checked myself into a treatment program so that I could get help and overcome my addictions.
Yeah, I just love your vulnerability about that, honey, and just the way that you've taught our kids because of that experience along the way.
Yeah.
And that was a big piece of your truth. And notice how simple that she just made that. And that's kind of the next step, is simplifying the truth. Once you've identified the truth, find a way to express it in the simplest terms possible. Something that you'll be ready to share when the right moment comes up.
Right.
Try to separate the emotion from the lie so that when you do speak, you can actually present the truth in a calm, matter-of-fact way.
Here's my simple truth. I chose to check myself into a treatment program for 19 days so that I could overcome my addiction and be the best version of myself, to become a functional, more engaged, and present mom. And it was one of the best decisions I've ever made.
That's so true. So the lie that you abandoned her because you didn't care about her gets counteracted by the truth that you went away for a really short period of time to take care of yourself because you wanted to be a good mom and take better care of her.
Exactly. And even during that 19 days, her dad brought her to visit me. So I did see her twice during that time.
Right.
Next, we want to focus on the power move. This is the actual putting the pebble in the shoe, and it's the heart of the strategy. Instead of launching in to defend myself with the truth or try to win my daughter over, I'm going to gently plant a seed, an undeniable truth, a pebble in her shoe at just the right moment. You're not forcing the conversation. You're waiting for the right time to present itself organically. That's when you calmly share your truth. No drama, no defensiveness, just quiet confidence.
Yeah. And it becomes this little truth that you just can't ignore. That's why we call it the pebble in the shoe, right? Whenever you have a pebble in your shoe, you just can't ignore it.
Right.
So if you can share that truth with emotional neutrality, your child is much more likely to receive it as fact rather than persuasion. When you're calm, it feels simple and genuine, not like you're trying to manipulate or convince them of anything.
Yes, yes. So I knew what my simple truth was, and now I had to be patient and wait for the right time to tell Annika my simple truth. The moment did finally present itself when we had a friend who was struggling with a mental health issue, and she went away to get some help. Now, her husband needed a break from the kids once in a while, and so he asked that we would watch the kids while he went and, did some self-care for himself. So their kids were at her house, and their young daughter was really struggling, missing her mom, who had been away for, at that point, I think a few weeks. Mm-hmm. And Annika and I were having a conversation about this little girl's struggle and how sad she was missing her mom. That was the perfect moment for me to ask Annika an open-ended question. And I said, "Do you think her mom is doing the right thing going away to get help?" And immediately Annika said, "Yes, of course. She needs to go away and get healthy so that she can come back and be a good mom." And that was the perfect moment for me to share my simple truth. You know, honey, there was a point in time when I went away for 19 days to overcome my addictions so that I could be the best version of myself, to become a functional, more engaged and present mom. And I just shared that with her, and I could see the wheels turning in her head, like, huh? What? That's where you went?
Yep. It was a light bulb moment, right? So you identified your simple truth, and then you were very patient, waiting for the right time for it to land. Here's what happens when we do this. Every time your ex repeats that same lie about you, the child has a little nugget of truth that ends up resurfacing for them. It's like that tiny pebble in their shoe, something that they just can't ignore. Mm-hmm. They may not confront the other parent, but internally, they start to question. This just isn't adding up. And over time, they actually kind of get forced to make sense of the contradiction, and then they decide what they need to believe for themselves.
Right.
Yeah. And that's part of this process, is letting it be their revelation. It's the goal. You don't want to force your truth down their throat.
No.
You want them to discover the truth, and then they own it more. Mm-hmm. When your child figures it out on their own, that realization is far more powerful and long-lasting than anything you could ever convince them of.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But the truth is, there is a risk. Mm-hmm. Now, for a time, your child might continue to believe the lie. But your job is to stay patient, calm, and steady. When an opportunity does present itself, you can gently remind them of your truth in a simple way that they're able to accept without becoming accusational or negative towards the other parent. You'll notice I didn't even bring up my ex when I shared my simple truth with my daughter. We didn't even discuss him.
Right.
Another way that you can do this is sharing stories and pictures of a time when supposedly whatever happened. So I had lots, I'm a scrapbooker, and I had all kinds of pictures of Annika at that age.
There's
and throughout,
no shortage of pictures,
throughout her young childhood. And, periodically I would say, "Oh, I remember when we did this, and I remember when I took you here." And I would show her pictures of that time when supposedly I had abandoned her. And that also continued to put pebbles in her shoe.
Yeah, that's not manipulative.
No.
That's strategic. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Now, Annika did believe her dad's narrative for quite a while, and that influenced her relationship with me. That was tough. But eventually, she uncovered the truth for herself. Mm-hmm. This approach helped her to internalize what was real and recognize what wasn't.
Right.
And honestly, it only took a few pebbles to start a shift in her beliefs over time. Now, today, it's clear that she's embraced the truth. She understands how her dad manipulated her through that challenging season, but it did not happen overnight. Mm-hmm. This is not a silver bullet. It takes time.
That's right. When kids start collecting enough pebbles, they become more curious. They start comparing the stories they've been told and begin forming their own conclusions. That's when real clarity begins to emerge. So be wise and intentional. Clearly identify the lie and just as clearly define the truth for yourself. Then turn that truth into a calm, matter-of-fact statement. Wait for the right moment, and when it comes, simply share your truth without bad-mouthing the ex. Then step back and let the pebble do its work over time.
Mm-hmm. And in the meantime, as you're patiently waiting, here are a few things that you can do to protect the well-being of your child and to stay connected.
That's right. Keep showing up, even when they're pulling away. And we know it can be exhausting. Over time, you might feel tempted to give up, to stop calling or attending events or making efforts to stay involved. But please don't. Your steady presence really matters. Even if they seem distant or resistant right now, your kids do notice your actions. They want to know that you're not going anywhere. The seeds that you plant with your steady presence will grow, even if it takes years to see the fruit from that. And resist the urge to punish a child for pulling away by making demands or even depriving them of something. As an example, don't stop paying their cell phone bill just because they didn't respond to your texts, right? Anything that's perceived as unloving is only going to reinforce those negative narratives.
Well, we were struggling through this, what we sometimes call the black cloud season in our home with Annika. I was really struggling emotionally. Sometimes I was tempted to just give up because I felt so discouraged and defeated. Annika's attitude and her comments were so hurtful, especially when she'd angrily plead with me to just give up my visitation and let her live at her dad's full time. But somehow I mustered up the positive energy I needed to stay engaged with her. It wasn't easy, but I refused to give up on our relationship even though it was hard and she continually rejected my love. Now, in the end, it was actually our consistency, our generosity, and love that eventually helped Annika see the truth and to reject the false narrative and then reach out when she was ready to receive our love and support. And let me just share some of the words she wrote to me this Mother's Day. She said in a card, "I'm so blessed to have you as my mom. Thank you for always, never, in capital letters underlined, never giving up on me."
I love that. Always never giving up on me.
"I look up to you more than you truly know in so many ways. You're outstanding, patient, kind, caring, inspiring, strong, lovely, and so, so special." It's humbling because I did not do this perfectly, believe me. But I truly believe the only reason Annika is able to use those kind of words to describe me today is because I did my best to live up to those words back then, even when I was experiencing a black cloud over our home and feeling discouraged and defeated. I had to keep my eye on the bigger picture. Our story was not over, and your story isn't over either.
That's right. This is why it's so important for parents who feel like they're under fire to do their best to show up well and hold on to the value of their relationship in their heart, even when their child is hurt, angry, rejecting, or distant. And if you relate to these kind of emotional struggles that Kim just described, and you're wondering what specific strategies she used to build some bridges of connection with Annika during that time, you can check out episode 195. And of course, you can find a link to that in the show notes.
Yeah. Another thing you can do, sounds counterintuitive, but it's so important to support your child's relationship with that other parent. You don't have to like your ex, but supporting your child's relationship with them is a gift. It's permission to love freely without strings, and your kids need that. Attempting to separate your child from the other parent whom they also love will just escalate drama and pain. Even if you believe your ex is causing your child emotional harm, be very careful in how you manage yourself.
That's right. You've got to choose to take the high road and treat everyone in the other home with basic civility, regardless of how they're treating you. This takes a level of maturity. And let me just remind us, we're not talking about not having healthy boundaries in place with exes or with kids.
Right.
But we are talking about a mature response. So choose civility over hostility. And remember, you're not doing it for your ex. You're doing it for the kids, right? Children feel emotionally safer when they don't have to brace themselves for awkward or hostile interactions. Peaceful exchanges help them breathe just a little easier.
Right. We mentioned earlier that the overarching goal is to protect your children from the conflict, not to pull them deeper into it. Now, this might feel impossible for you right now, especially if you're feeling dismissed, devalued, or disregarded by your ex. But we urge you to do everything in your power to improve your co-parenting relationship. So, if you're up for that challenge, which we hope for your kids' sake that you are, we've added some links in the show notes to several past episodes that can help. So please check those out. Keep learning and stay focused on what you can do to build more cooperation and peace as your kids move between homes.
That's right. Here's the bottom line. You don't have to be perfect. You just need to be faithful. Keep showing up. Keep choosing your children's emotional safety over your desire to prove a point. And when you mess up, repair, reconnect, and move forward as your best possible self, even when things are tough. Kim just said it a moment ago. We didn't do this perfectly, but we really tried to stay focused on doing it as best we could. Yeah. And it's paid off.
Yeah.
Your child doesn't need a flawless parent. They need one with a growth mindset who's present and willing to do the next best thing on their behalf.
Right, exactly.
Hey, thanks so much for joining us today. I can't wait to reconnect with you next week, where we'll talk about a few things in our simple step that might be going on under the surface when a child really is pulling away. So keep that growth mindset on. But for now, we're going to make this episode a wrap.
Until next time.